So I recently put out a video on making simple hop samplers. Well, I wasn't all that happy with how those two batches turned out. So the goal of this video is my attempt to make an improved hop sampler. And I did it! Well, stick around and see what I changed, and let's see how the beers turned out. Well, thanks for stopping by Cascades Homebrew. My name is Brent. So the goal of these hop samplers was very similar to the last one. In general, I wanted an easy process that was built around 1 pound of dry malt extract and 1 ounce of hops. Well, what changes did I make? Well, I changed from using the Breeze Pale Ale dry malt extract to using the Breeze Golden Light dry malt extract. The overall goal here was lighten the color, maybe reduce some of the maltiness. This batch also went from a 3/4 gallon batch up to a full 1 gallon batch. I figured I was putting a little bit more time and effort into this one. I might as well get a couple more bottles of beer. So I also added a little bit of table sugar to the batch. I added 0.15 pounds or 2.4 ounces or 68 grams of table sugar. So the main goal there was to lighten up the body. Sometimes extract can be a little bit heavier than just an all grain batch. So also, that amount of sugar brought me up about the same original gravity since I had increased volume from the 3/4 gallon to the 1 gallon. So also, instead of doing a no boil, I went for a 10-minute boil on this one. Kind of the idea was maybe the 10-minute boil would help a little bit with clarity, and also hops added in at 10 minutes might give a little bit more hop expression. So I also tweaked the hop schedule. So instead of adding the full 1 ounce for a steep at flame out, I divided it up and added 3/4 of an ounce or 7 grams at 10 minutes. So I also added 3/4 of an ounce or 21 grams in a steep at 180 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. I also thought using Lutra might take advantage of some of the benefits of a Kvike strain, including fast fermentation times. Maybe I could turn over these batches a little quicker. And also, a little more flexibility in fermentation temperature control. I wouldn't need to tie up my fermentation chamber just for a small batch of beer. So overall, I think the process is very simple. And as far as the brew day time, so basically, I went from being a 10-minute steep to a 10-minute boil and then a 20-minute hop steep. So basically, I added on 20 extra minutes to the brew day. I figure since most of that time is really unattended, you can use it for sanitation, cleaning, or maybe just relaxing. I'm willing to throw in an extra 20 minutes on brew day if I can help out make a better beer. So the brew day for this one was pretty similar to my other batches. I'll try to go through it fairly quickly. I started by prepping my water. Each batch got 3/4 grams of gypsum and also a small amount of potassium metabisulfite to remove the chlorine and chloramine in my tap water. Since I did 2 batches, I treated enough water for both batches at once. I calculated I would need 1.25 gallons or 2.75 liters of water for each batch. This accounted for some boil off during the 10-minute boil and loss to the hop absorption. I ended up with a little extra volume, so I think I could have scaled it back on the batch a little bit. As I mentioned, I'm using Breeze Golden Dry Malt Extract for this batch. The date code on the bag indicated this was made September 22nd of 2021, so it was about 8 months ago. I measured out 1 pound or 450 grams. I turned off the heat and then I add the extract into the warm water. I'm sure to mix the extract in thoroughly before turning the heat back on. And just as it was about to come up to boil, I remember I forgot to add the sugar. So I turned off the heat and I stirred in my 0.15 pounds or 68 grams of table sugar. Once the mix was back up to a boil, I added my 1/2 ounce or 7 grams of Simcoe hops and also 1/2 gram of Irish moss. I let the wort boil for 10 minutes. At the end of the 10-minute boil, I moved the pot over to my sink to let it cool. I chilled it down to 180 degrees Fahrenheit or 82 degrees Celsius. I then mixed in my 3/4 ounce or 21 grams of Simcoe hops, what I let steep at 180 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. After the end of the 20-minute steep, I checked on the temperature. It had fallen to about 164 degrees Fahrenheit, around 73 degrees Celsius. Note, these temps and below, the importance of sanitation starts to kick in. So at this point, you want to ensure that everything that touches the wort is clean and sanitary. Since this is a small batch, I chill it down in the sink just using water. Given that I'm using Kvike yeast, which can be pitched fairly warm, all I need to do to get it down to 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius range is just use tap water. With most ale yeast, I would need to use ice to get it fully down to pitching temperatures. The chilled wort was then transferred into my sanitized Big Mouth Bubbler fermenters. The 2 hop samplers I made today were with Simcoe hops and Azacca hops. I pitched in 2.75 grams of dried Lutra yeast into each batch. That's 1/4 of an 11-gram pack, which I think should be about a decent pitch rate. The dry yeast was sprinkled on top of the wort. I then moved the fermenters up to an upper-level bathroom. As you can see, I often use this tub for bottle conditioning. So the temperature of this room during the summer is generally in the 76 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit range. That's about 24 to 27 degrees Celsius. 6 hours later, fermentation was really starting to churn. And the following morning, the airlocks were pumping strong. By day 5, fermentation was starting to wrap up. I ended up bottling this one on day 13. I'm sure I could have bottled it sooner, but this time just kind of fit my schedule. A few days prior, I moved the fermenters to my lower level that stays a bit cooler. The wort is looking fairly clear at this point. The Azacca batch still has a few floaters hanging around on the top. The yeast at the bottom is an interesting chunky look. So this small bathroom is not the most photogenic area of my house, but the tile floor and the nearby sink make it a good place for me to work in. So I made 2 changes to my bottling practice this time. So one, instead of directly adding sugar or sugar cubes into each bottle, I boiled up a solution of sugar and water, and I added 5 milliliters of the solution to each bottle. This was just something I was wanting to try, and the carbonation was on point. Second, I was a little concerned that oxidation in the bottle might have been an issue with the prior batch. So this time, I flushed the headspace with CO2 before capping each bottle. I also bottled 4 in clear bottles, 2 of them which were not purged. Darkening is usually the first signs of oxidation, so I hoped that the clear bottles would let me monitor for color changes in case there was oxidation. So after just 7 days in the bottle, I was curious how fast the Lutra was working with bottle conditioning. So I went ahead and cracked open my first bottle. The Azacca hop sampler seemed nicely carbonated, and it tasted good enough that I came back a few minutes later and opened up a bottle of the Simcoe hop sampler. So the beers have been in the bottle for exactly 1 month. Let's crack them open and see how they taste. Well, before we do that, let's take a quick look. So I mentioned when I bottled these beers, I purged the headspace with CO2. Try to avoid potential oxidation. Oxidation with bottle conditioned beers is kind of a tricky subject. I have an article on my website where I did a couple examples with hoppy beers where I found purging the headspace definitely made a noticeable difference with the color of the beer, especially with some really hoppy beers, but even with a pale ale. Well, in this case, here are the bottles. The one over here is one that was purged, where the headspace was purged with CO2. The one on this side was not purged. If you look at them, I see no color difference. So to me, the beers look identical. They've dropped clear, and they're a really nice light golden color. So I'm not going to open these ones today. These are both from the Simcoe batch. I'm going to open a batch of the Simcoe and one of the Azacca. This here's the Azacca batch. And this here's the Simcoe batch. So I seem to got a little bit ahead on the Simcoe one. I think that was probably more from the pour. There could be a little difference in carbonation in the bottle. But as far as appearance on the beer, they're really a nice, clear, light golden color. I am seeing more bubbles in the Simcoe one, so it might just be a little bit more carbonated. So I guess the real test, for this simple hop sampler, are we getting Simcoe character in this one? Are we getting Azacca character in this one? Let's first go in for aroma. I get a nice light hoppy character in both of them. So I think the extra carbonation in this particular Simcoe one is driving flavors. So I get a lot of the same character that I got from that simple all grain pale that I made. A bit of a kind of tropical, a little bit of pineapple, maybe a little bit of pine. It's not overwhelming like I used to associate with Simcoe hops though. For the Azacca one, I seem to get a little bit more of kind of some fruit characters, a little bit more of a kind of a bright fruit. What if we go in for taste on these? So one, overall commonalities between these. These are actually really nice. I get a nice little bit of a kind of a grainy character that I often don't associate with extract beer. But in these one, There's a nice kind of sweetness that first touches the tongue. And as it sits on the tongue, you kind of get this a little bit more of a grain complexity. The bitterness level on these ones I think are both spot on. Really nice for kind of a pale ale. And as far as the flavor on them, I'm definitely getting some differences in the hop character. So with the Simcoe one, I get a little bit more of kind of a tropical pineapple kind of vibe to it. It's got a little bit of that kind of classic American citrus character from a pale ale. If you go for the Azacca one, I think more of a kind of a sweet fruit, maybe a little bit of a kind of a mango-y kind of character. So overall, I would say I'm extremely happy with how both of these turned out. So the one thing that I really like is that they're really a nice, enjoyable beer. There's something I kind of crave. So that last extract hop sampler, I still have some sitting around, but I don't know. They just don't taste that great. I may finish them, or maybe I'll end up just dumping them out. So what about using Lutra in the beers? Well, I don't know. There's enough hop character in here that I'm not sure if I can pick out if there's any specific character that's coming from the Lutra. It's definitely not objectionable. Like I said, I really like the beers. So the Lutra was very easy to use. It fermented pretty fast. I let them go almost a full 2 weeks before I bottled them, but they were definitely done fermentation quicker, so I could have moved that up. They did seem to carb up pretty quickly in the bottle as well. So I think switching over to Lutra was an improvement, both in the time from start to end to drinking beer, but also with the easy fermentation temperature control. I'd be kind of curious about different fermentation temperatures. It's a lot easier to warm up a beer, say to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. In this case, I just went the easy route and let them set out at room temperature. So I've been really enjoying this hop exploration series. I'm just cycling back, trying some things that I've done in the past, trying some new things, see what the best way to evaluate hops are. And I'm not done yet. So right now, I've got some 1-gallon smash beers going. These are Maris Otter and Brew 1 hops. I split it into 3 different fermenters, one with Lutra, one with Voss, and the other with USO5. Hopefully that'll be on my channel here the next month or so. So make sure you check back. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in more of this hop exploration series, if you're interested in the future content, make sure you subscribe. Click that like button if you got some value out of this one. Hopefully this information will help you build some great beers. And cheers!